Happy Easter, everyone. If Christ has not been raised, then our preaching is in vain and your faith is in vain. St. Paul here is telling us that the resurrection of Jesus is the foundation of our faith and life. And Dr. Peter Kraft, I remember he said something very interesting. He said, he always found it fascinating that of all the world religions, Christianity is the most easy to disprove. So if we found the bones of Jesus somewhere in Palestine, all of Christianity would be over. Now, we assert as Christians that the resurrection is a historical fact. It's not a metaphor. We believe it really physically happened. So today, let's try to reflect on this beautiful mystery of the resurrection. Venerable Fulton Sheen said that God gave us a mind to know. We're meant to know truth. So let's look at the Gospels. Let's look at history. See what God is teaching us. When we examine the Gospels, we can observe 4 facts noted by Pope Benedict XVI. The first fact is that the disciples were skeptical, so they didn't believe in the resurrection. The women go to the tomb to find a dead body, and even when the angels tell them that Jesus is being raised, they don't believe. And St. Luke writes, "Now it was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary, the mother of James, and the other women with them, who told this to the apostles. But these words seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe them." So this teaches us something about the patience of God. God knows we have doubts. He knows we have difficulties. He knows we are slow to believe. He's very patient. And so over the next 40 days, Jesus will appear to his apostles to convince them, to give them evidence. In our journey with Jesus, it takes time to fully understand what he's revealing to us, and that's normal. Second fact, every historian finds it interesting that the Gospels record that Jesus first appeared to women. Why is that interesting? Because women back then didn't have any legal credibility. So if the resurrection had been made up by Christians, you know how people say that? A lot of people will say the resurrection is made up by Christians. It never happened. But if it were made up, why would you invent that Jesus appeared to the women? That doesn't help your case. Even in other parts of the New Testament, the Christians wrote, "The Lord is risen indeed and has appeared to Simon." Now, they're not saying that he appeared to Simon first, because we know Jesus didn't appear to him first. They wrote that down in the creeds because they're trying to convince other people. Now, the fact remains, all 4 Gospels coming from different oral traditions, they all agree Jesus appeared first to Mary Magdalene, the other women. And the only reason to write that is because it's true. From a spiritual point of view, it's fitting that these women get to see Jesus first because they were faithful. They stood by Jesus at the cross. God loves all of us, even when we betray him, but he is first seen by those who love him more. Third fact, Pope Benedict acknowledges that not every single detail of the gospel narratives are matters of faith. So last night we heard, "Suddenly there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descending from heaven came and rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothing white as snow." Is that historically accurate? An angel sat on a stone? It could be, but the point is that detail is not necessarily a matter of our faith. We assert that the resurrection is absolutely historical. It's the basis of our faith. Whether or not an angel sat on a stone, that doesn't affect the argument. We acknowledge that the gospel writers, the 4 of them, made literary additions because all historical writers actually do that. I'll give you an example. Did you ever see that movie, Apollo 13, about astronauts? Now, at one point, the movie shows the 3 astronauts, they're all arguing with each other. Now, we know that didn't happen because we have audio recordings of the whole mission. Now, the writers put that in to let us, the audience, know that they were in danger. Because if you actually listen to the audio tapes, they were in danger, but you would never know it just by hearing them calmly speak to each other. So they put that in, but it's still a historical movie. Another example, we have two accounts of that military leader Hannibal. He crosses the Alps, he goes south to attack Rome. But these two accounts are completely contradictory. But no historian denies the fact that Hannibal actually did attack Rome. And in the same way, despite these certain little discrepancies in the Gospels, the facts don't change. The facts of Jesus' resurrection, that his body was placed in a tomb by Joseph of Arimathea. The tomb was visited by women on Sunday morning. The body is found missing. And then many people and groups of people have encounters with the risen Jesus. So as for the angel sitting on the stone, yes, it could happen, but it's not a matter of faith. Number fourth fact, the Gospels record many appearances of the risen Jesus to his disciples, and these appearances seem to be the best explanation for the rapid growth of Christianity. Father Gerald O'Collins, he's done something really interesting. He looks at these accounts of Jesus' appearances, and he compares them to other studies. He looks at studies of people who have had family members who have died, people who have had mystical visions, and then people who have had hallucinations. So in this one study of people who have gone through bereavement, 293 people, half of them said that they saw their loved one alive. Now, the very interesting thing about that is none of them, when they saw their loved one alive, changed their lives. And most of them kept the matter to themselves. And then there was always this sad awakening. They still knew, in the end, their loved one was still dead. Now, that is very different from the gospel accounts. So they, the women, they left the tomb quickly with fear and great joy and ran to tell his disciples. Suddenly Jesus met them and said, "Greeting." And they came to him, took hold of his feet and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me." When the disciples met Jesus, their whole lives change. They make it their mission. They have to tell everyone about the risen Jesus, and a lot of them die for it. And within a few weeks, thousands of Jewish people, they all become Christian. And within a few years, so many important beliefs that lasted for over 1,000 years, suddenly they change. 4 quick examples. No more animal sacrifice. The laws of Moses are pushed aside. The Sabbath, which was Saturday, suddenly becomes Sunday. And God, who is always one, suddenly they all say he's now a Trinity. Now, historians say that's too fast. You have to have an adequate cause to explain something that changes so quickly. Now, if it's a delusion, let's say all the early Christians were deluded, you still have to explain the empty tomb. The body was still missing. Now, I found out that back then, it was very common to rob graves. People would steal bodies. But even if a body were stolen, that wouldn't be enough for people to change their lives and change all their beliefs, especially if there's nothing to gain. Has anyone watched, there's a documentary on Netflix called Waco, American Apocalypse. Has anyone wasted their time and watched that? Please, anyone? So either you're watching worse stuff on Netflix or you're watching better stuff. Now, I watched that documentary, 3-part, in preparation for this homily. Now, just to let you know, so Waco, the famous thing about Waco is that there was a cult there that lasted for 30 years, and it ended in a violent shootout, and the leader got killed. Now, I bring it up because when the leader got killed, the whole thing fell apart. It's very apparent the guy was insane. And that dynamic happens with all charismatic leaders. As soon as when the guy's alive, the thing flourishes. As soon as he dies, the whole thing falls apart. Now compare that with Jesus. Jesus had a very short public career. How long was his career preaching? 3 years. Now, he has a short public career, then he's abandoned by nearly all his followers. He's crucified as a false Messiah, and then back then everyone would think he's rejected by God. But within a few short years, Christianity spreads rapidly. Within 300 years, it becomes a world religion. How do we explain that? Father O'Collins, he compares Jesus' career, if you will, propagation of his faith with 3 other leaders of world religions: Buddha, Confucius, and Mohammed. Buddha apparently had a long life teaching, so did Confucius. And Confucius, when he died, he was not rejected, he was celebrated. And then Muhammad had a wealthy wife and military victories to help spread his religion. So long career, financial resources, success in battle helped spread their religions. Jesus did not have any of these advantages. So in order to explain that rapid rise, you need an adequate cause. And of course, we Christians would assert that cause is the resurrection. Maybe the most practical question to ask is, Jesus appeared to the disciples. Why doesn't he appear to us? Have you ever wondered that? Why doesn't Jesus just say, here I am, I'm God, believe me? Do you know the answer? I think the answer is because even if Jesus appeared to us, we still wouldn't love him. Because in the end, Jesus doesn't just want us to believe in him, he wants us to love him. So if Jesus flew around in the sky and said, here I am, people I don't think would love him. Our faith is about what is true, but it's also about love. And isn't that a sign of God's goodness that he doesn't force us to believe? He gives us evidence and reasons, but most importantly, the risen Jesus wants us to love him freely, to find life in him, and then to share that life with other people. Happy Easter.